Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Good afternoon. Now, I was told that we have to start this with song and dance, but Arun ne to sab kar liya. Boxing bhi ho gayi, sab kuch ho gaya abhi. We'll figure this out. But this is about having a conversation. So what we're going to do is, I host a technology show, so यहाँ पे technology की unboxing हो जाए. We'll be talking about AI, we'll be talking about gadgets. You guys are cool with that? No, I'm just kidding. Can we have a huge round of applause for the panel, because this is going to be not your podcast, but it will be a little bit like a podcast, because we're not going to follow any rules here. Anyone chimes in. This is a conversation about 2025. This is a conversation about what this lovely audience here. How many audience members here are Gen Z? Put your hands up. Okay, now we need to play to the audience, guys. We know exactly what we've been talking about, which is mental health and well-being in this age, which I would like to say about AI and so much more. Dr. Marker, what a pleasure to have all of you all here. But Doc, tell me something. When we speak about mental health in 2025, isn't it refreshing and encouraging now that we can speak about this openly, unfettered, and have these conversations? It was very different when you and I were growing up.
Of course. So thank you. Nice being here. You're right. I think the biggest change that we've seen and that I've personally seen in my practice after working for 23 years in this field is far more openness and acceptance of mental health. And is it on the rise? Yes. As per a few days back, there's a WHO statistics that says in our youth, in Gen Z, there is one suicide attempt every 3 seconds as we speak, and one death by suicide every 40 seconds as we speak. That's so alarming, but that is the statistics world over. So mental health is on the rise, there is more acceptance, but what I love to know is, and I do know that the stigma towards mental health, the conversations towards mental health, and the openness with this generation is amazing. And I think with more acceptance, more acceptability, I think we're going to see far more people receiving the right help for mental health.
Fatima, that's an encouraging sign. I know that you work with a lot of kids, a lot of Gen Zs at the school. And are these similar findings and insights that this conversation is now being had without any stigma attached, without any shame? And are parents, millennial parents, doing a good enough job? I'll come to Simone for that one as well. But are we doing a good enough job in really making this a conducive environment?
So obviously, the generation has a lot of exposure to AI. So tools are accessible, it's easier. Has the stigma really gone, Dr. Marker, I think? That is something that still needs to be worked on. Children will not go to a counselor because there are others waiting to say, hey, what was the problem? So while we're okay to talk about it in chat rooms and in private conversations, as open as it should be, no, not really. But, that's work in progress. Are parents doing enough? I actually have a perspective on that. So Simone, before you jump in, let me put my 2 bits. I have a 20-year-old as well. I think the adult conversations need a little bit of thought as well. I think we expect, Dr. Zirak and I are born from the 70s, so we assume the generation should be like us. We dealt with things. This generation was not exposed to just dealing with things, so the conversations that we have as adults need a definite change. Hey, by the way, all you Gen Zs, I think you're going to love me because I'm batting for you. We've got to have those conversations, but our approach to those conversations have to change. We should be talking about it, but listen, let's not use that as an exit card. Every time something doesn't work out, that cannot be the problem. Some amount of regulation is important.
This healthy competition between millennials and Gen Z is something we can go on for the whole day. Gen Z, I'm on your side for this session, but as a 90s kid, Simone, that grew up in this city, it's probably from the first session that we saw, from Padmaja's session, I think Milind also mentioned that we all know this is the cultural hub of the country, and the conversations that happen here have always been much ahead of their time. We've grown up in this city, Simone. Now you have not one, not two, but now the third one on the way. Is that something that you're actually recalibrating in your head, saying, okay, These are kids that need to be spoken to in a particular tone and tenor, and there needs to be a sense of empathy around these conversations.
Good afternoon, everyone. For all those that don't know, I am a parenting content creator. Now, me as a millennial, my generation is dealing with a lot because we have been raised by the boomers in a very different way from the way we are raising our children, which is the Gen Alphas. And because our generation as millennials were very woke about mental health, I feel like it's the millennials who really started the conversation. We're the ones who started acknowledging that anxiety and or depression is real. Seek help, normalize going to a psychiatrist. I have sessions with Dr. Marker in the pandemic myself. Having said that, we as parents today are ensuring, I for one talk about this on social media all the time, that even my 7-year-old child or my 5-year-old child, I take their mental health very seriously. I can spot when my child is anxious and I don't take it for granted. I work with them because I'm pretty sure doctor will say the same, and we all know, if you go to a psychiatrist, what does it all sum down to? Childhood trauma. Everything always goes back to childhood trauma. So as a millennial, it's my responsibility to raise the next generation, and I think the millennials are doing a fantastic job.
Fatima, the rule applies. This is the opposite of a news debate. So you can interrupt, interject anytime, and I'm sure we'll all be civil about it. So please, I know you have a thought you want to share.
Yeah, I just think that sometimes, everything's exaggerated. And this is the generation that we have because of social media. I think Dr. Marker and I were talking about the fact that there is overexposure. Everything is magnified to such a level that even if I'm not depressed, when I'm looking at a social media feed, I'm actually, scrolling through and I'm picking up signs. So obviously there's something at play that is affecting all of us because we are the largest consumers of social media. But I feel that needs to be a conversation had with the adults in a way that can help. Not to say, I'm going to push this under the carpet, reflect on it. Is this a need or is it just playing to an audience? The reason I'm saying this is that a lot of kids sitting out there, sorry, I am a 70s child, a lot of youngsters out there assume that if I just talk about it and if there is an option to label me, I'll get away from doing certain things. I don't think I'm batting for that. I'm actually batting for the fact that you do have a problem, you want to talk about it, but your parent has not understood the magnitude. I'm saying that some amount of responsibility is with the adult generation. My point was that. And to get help for ourselves. I think we've got to be, as that generation, parenting ourselves with better techniques to cope with the generation that's super exposed.
So I want to add, I've always joked that the kids don't need the help despite me being a child psychiatrist. It's the parents.
Gotcha.
The parents need to come in, and I say this always, right? Like if we have a toothache, for example, that's been needling us for like a week, you're not going to go to a cardiologist. If you have a sprained foot or a fracture, you will go to an orthopedic surgeon. Then why is it so difficult to approach us? We're not scary people. We are mental health professionals. We do not over-label and over-diagnose. So then what you were saying, right? I mean, yes, is there overexposure? Is there social media? Is there AI playing into the minds and feeding of children with regards to over-labeling and over-diagnosing of mental health? But that's exactly why we're here, to make sure whether it's an emotional problem or family problem or then an actual neurochemical imbalance, right? Because today, I think a lot of us use depression and anxiety very loosely. Like there's some stress at work or things are not going my way, I'm feeling suicidal or I'm depressed. But it may not be clinical depression, right? And if you seek the right help at the right time and create that awareness and acceptance for yourself and your family, then I say you could probably save a life or you can prevent suicide if it is clinical.
Yeah, but the point again being, Dr. Marker, a lot of them are actually not going to the psychiatrist or the counselor or the experts. AI can get used, and I believe it's an enabler. But sometimes there's that gray area that you're Googling symptoms and you're just working out that, hey, listen, I'm going through trauma. Or this is toxic because my boss spoke to me in a particular way. Hey, grow up. You know, we all have a conversation, somebody's stressed. I think what I'm trying to get at is the magnitude at which we overanalyze instead of actually making it very simple. She spoke rudely, she was having a bad day, get over it, move on. But what is serious is when you are falling into that rut where you don't know what's going on and you don't want to wake up to get out of bed and it's not something you can control. I'm talking about that being a conversation that needs a bit more attention with the adults in the room.
Yep.
I'm just going to quickly come in there. So, again, the Gen Zs have been raised by a generation that are not very open to going and seeking therapy. It's a social shame. What is wrong with my child? Oh my God, therapy is like looked down upon. It's a scary place to be. Versus my generation, honestly, I would much rather talk to a therapist when I have to deal with my child and get the correct guidance and then deal with my child than kind of go to Google. And I feel like that's not just me. I see that across the board with a lot of my friends where we actually seek help from professionals and then guide our children accordingly.
Simone, but that's a very evolved thought, and that's a thought we're having in the top 1%. For the larger population of the country, I feel like these are topics that probably could be touched upon more. But it's an interesting thing you mentioned there, Fatema, because my mom's a doctor, and I remember when I used to go to her clinic for any sort of treatment, or I thought I had a problem, I used to Google it before I went there. So much before ChatGPT and Gemini, she had a board outside which said, if you've Googled this already, then you can cancel your appointment. Because a lot of young millennials like me were doing the same. Now it's the age of AI. And actually, you know what? Let's make this a safe space, all right? The doc is out here and there's a bunch of us. How many of us have used AI? When I say AI, I mean ChatGPT or Google Gemini or Perplexity to have a conversation about our emotions in a safe space. Quick show of hands. Right? So there's a fair set in the audience. Some of you all probably don't want to raise your hands in public, but I feel you. I do it all the time.
I did it too.
Quick confession, right?
I do too.
See, exactly.
I absolutely do
exactly. Doc, so, you know, while there's pros and cons, right? The pros are that we have a safe space, or what we think ostensibly is a safe space. And then the cons are the kinds, you know, the wrong set of news that we've been getting from around the world. Someone's taken it too far, someone's taken it too literally, and someone's done something which is unfortunate. These are the perils of using technology to take up the role of a medical professional.
So I think at this point it's two different aspects, right? So parents, let's look at parents. I just feel that today parenting is a lot of snow plowing parenting, as I call it, which is trying to take away all the obstacles, problems, hurdles and pain away from their child's life. Is that really healthy? And the answer is absolutely not. Because if you don't teach our kids or the next generation to learn how to fail, fall, to make mistakes, learn from consequences, and that's what we've all done, right? Some of our best learnings have come from failure. Some of our best insights in life have come from pain or loss, right? And difficulties or disharmonies. But if you take all that away from the next generation that's to be, you're going to have a whole lot of people with no resilience, low stress tolerance, and two magic words that I always bring up is poor acceptability and adaptability. And for me, these are the two pillars of strength for resilience. The more accepting we become to situations, to ourselves, to our own thoughts, to our own minds, and with regards to mental health, therefore you can be more adapting, right? And today we are seeing a lot of, like you were saying, a lot of this generation is finding it difficult to adapt to situations, to mental health concerns and things like that. So coming back to the AI, so I have a lot of my young clients, right, who will actually openly share with me their chats that they've had on ChatGPT, where they've used that to kind of voice their thoughts, feelings, and emotions. And I've read some of the chats and the responses that they come back. It's all algorithms that come up, and it's not sometimes showing the mirror. You can't just be the chat coming back to you is accepting your pain, is showcasing empathy, is kind of using a more supportive psychotherapeutic feedback. But the way I look at therapy is sometimes you have to call it out. You have to show someone the mirror to be more accepting of yourself or your negative thoughts or your thinking, or then give a reality check to some of the problems and give healthy coping mechanisms. So for me, I differ with that. I feel anyways, we're living in such a huge digital age and virtual reality that sometimes come to us, experience the physical contact and the physical face-to-face session of beautiful minds coming together. And I don't look at therapy as therapy and counseling. I look at it as life coaching. I mean, we have business coaches, you have tennis coaches, and life coaching is a beautiful term because I think all of us need it at some point.
Doc, I'm going to take one for the team. Yeah, if you could just elaborate. When you talk about a psychiatrist, a psychologist, a therapist, a life coach, how does one who is completely naive approach the situation? Who do I go to? And what is, depending on the gravity of the situation, what would you recommend?
So I think the first step is if there is a problem and there's a question mark whether I'm feeling low, depressed, anxious, panic attacks, whatever of course, like you said, all of us go to Google first to understand perhaps a bit of what we're going through. Any mental health professional first. So it could be a psychologist or a psychiatrist or even a counselor, right? The difference is what's clinical and what's non-clinical. So I think the first step, if you're still unsure or you're an individual or a parent, come to us as a psychiatrist because we then will tell you whether your depression or what you're feeling or your moods that you're going through is something because of an external situation, a situation at home, a toxic environment at your workspace. But that could be that too. But at the same time, if you're experiencing certain symptoms, right, that can be picked up. And if it's clinical, unfortunately, it's clinical. What is clinical? It's a neurochemical imbalance. So depression, just as an example, at its clinical best is a serotonin imbalance in the brain. And you can't fix that with just talk therapy or chat GPT and counseling. Sometimes, unfortunately or fortunately, we have to use medication.
Yeah.
And today, the biggest stigma that you were talking about is, I don't want to start medications and drugs. I'll be dull, I'll be sleepy, I'll gain weight, I'll have sexual dysfunctions, etc. And that stops the treatment or the right treatment sometimes right there.
Ayush, I just want to jump in. When I talked about AI being an enabler, it wasn't about replacing counseling. What I was saying is that there is a lot available to regulate your emotions, to actually get into a healthier lifestyle. I'm a sportsman's wife. I think I just heard a young athlete talk about the fact that her goal was to win. She didn't think about being depressed or what, didn't work out. She was thinking about the joy it brought her. So there are lots of AI apps available to help you regulate your sleep, help you time manage. Big problem with children who are diagnosed with ADHD, they just don't have attention. There's lots that can help you put a structure in your life. I'm using that as an enabler, not to get consult to say, hey, listen, are you depressed or are you just anxious? Can this be medicated or not? I think that's the big game changer. Why don't we use that effectively?
You're right. Honestly, everyone's talking about AI because there's so much pressure from investors and society and everyone to use AI in some form. But from a tech perspective, there's machine learning algorithms that have been working. The latest products launched at Apple, the Apple Watch for one. I was talking to a doctor recently on the show, and it has hypertension alerts. It has a sleep score now, a recovery score. You can judge what your blood oxygen's like, ECG, arrhythmia, heart rate notifications. You can use technology for good. Can always be the good one there. But, just as we're wrapping up, and I think this has been an insightful session. Thank you, Doc, for that last bit, because I wanted to really put myself out on a limb out there. Simone, you put your life out there on social media, right? And as social media creators, sometimes we need to have filters. I've seen your content. Hats off to you, because it's literally the same when I'm sitting with you over here, and that's a very difficult thing to do. But tell me, if there are certain changes or tweaks that you can make to your lifestyle, and I'll come to the other panelists as well, what is it that you would do from the prism of social media differently to probably lead a healthier lifestyle, physically and mentally?
Okay, so what I do is, and I feel like this needs to be what a lot of content creators do, is, firstly, content creators take a lot of pressure upon themselves. I have to do this. I have to post so many times a week. I have to, or I'm going to lose followers, or I'm not going to, or she's going to go ahead of me, or da-da-da-da-da. It's just non-stop. Stop. I've grown without putting that pressure on myself. If I have to take 4 days off and not post, I will take those 4 days off. If I need to recharge, I will recharge, and it's okay. I can still manifest that one reel going viral that's going to do for me everything that 4 days of stressful content is going to. There's no need to stress yourself out in the journey of kind of trying to grow in any field. I mean, this is just content creation. Having said that, putting myself out there is something I personally choose to do. I believe that I've created my community because they know who I am, they trust me, I've shared my highs, I've shared my lows. But I, as a parent, have boundaries. If my child's going to be throwing a tantrum and crying and sharing his deepest, darkest secrets with me, am I going to film him and put that on social media? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Am I going to talk about the fact that my child dealt with something and this is how, as a parent, I seeked help to overcome certain issues without getting into details? Absolutely. Now, also adding on to what Dr. Marker said earlier, he can't say it because he's polite. I'll say it. Every alternate account is a life coach now. Life coaches, I have so many friends who've become life coaches because they were depressed, they found help, and today they believe that they can now coach you into getting out of that. While I respect their breathing techniques and I respect the meditation and I respect that any holistic practice is great, I have one of my best friends did not want to take his medication. He did not want to take therapy, and he's not with us anymore. He passed away. He did what he did, and I highly urge people that seek professional help.
Absolutely.
That's Fatima. I want to take the
Absolutely.
same question to you because we have maybe a few seconds left. But just to end this one, certain tips that you would recommend to the audience and everyone watching that would make your lifestyle a whole lot healthier. The doc's going to sum this up, though.
I think it's non-negotiable that you need to sleep. You need to regulate that sleep. Fitness has to be a part of your lifestyle. I've learned it the hard way. I almost had a breakdown, rock bottom, because I was overworked. I thought I could do it all, and then you realize that it costs a lot to get then the help, as opposed to just becoming more fit, sleeping well, putting those boundaries. I agree with Simone. I'm on social media as well. I put out content when I want. But I think you have to reach that point in your life where you don't regret not being out there. That's your space. You'll have to figure it out. Some mistakes will happen. You will figure it out. So the message I want to say is that if you can have a sport or any form of music, dance, art, it does help. It's therapeutic. Sleep well. And please, this is non-negotiable. Please see a medical professional. ChatGPT or a teacher or a parent are not the medical professionals. We are parents.
Fair point. Over to the medical professional for the last 20 seconds of this conversation.
So a quick statistics again, WHO. By the time there is acknowledgement that something is not okay within myself, to the time youth reaches medical help, is guess how many months or years? 8 to 10 years. Imagine what can get lost in 8 to 10 years. So my last message is, if you're not sure, or you have a loved one who's suffering in any way, or you feel someone may not be okay, reach out or encourage others to reach out, because like Simone said, you could probably just save a life. When we were training, we were told if someone's perhaps suicidal, oh, please don't ask them, you're putting thoughts into their mind. That's absolutely rubbish. They say just sometimes by asking someone and supporting their feelings and emotions and asking them if they're okay and if they need help, or you need us to be sitting beside them to hear them out, you could perhaps save a life. So please do that moving forward.
Doc, to practice what we are preaching, and also in the spirit of taking this conversation forward. All of us are active on social media. You can slide into our DMs. We're still here for a bit. You can have a conversation with us over coffee. This conversation continues. And for this lovely conversation, Fatema, Dr. and Simone, what a pleasure to have you here at NDTV Yuva. And what an amazing audience. A huge, huge round of applause. Thank you.